equipping U.S. forces, weapons and gear modernization, armor, survivability. I worked a lot with the special operations community on equipment. And it was because of all the years that I did that, I wound up doing that at a very high level as an executive for a major defense firm for a number of years. But because of that, in February 2022, actually a few weeks later, in March 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, I got a phone call from some friends that were retired out of the Army Special Forces community who said, hey, the government isn't moving fast. A bunch of us are getting together and we're putting together a team of volunteers to go to Ukraine and advise the Ukrainian government on helping them raise their army. And the Ukrainians want a weapons and gear guy really badly who can teach them requirements and procurement from the American system and from an American perspective. Any chance you want to come to Ukraine with us? I said, when are you leaving? I said, Saturday. I said, okay. Anything else I should know? They said, yeah, no pay, no benefits, no backing, no insurance. But this NGO will pay your airfare. So I went and talked to my wife, and she said, yeah, you got to do this. And I went and started packing up my body armor, tactical equipment, medical gear, chemical warfare gear, etc. Did some crash training courses with some friends from various parts of the government for a few days, and went to Poland to join the team. And about 6 of us went into Ukraine together in about the fourth, fifth week of the invasion. And I wound up going to Ukrainian Safe House to embed in the Ministry of Strategic Industries of Ukraine, where almost immediately I fell deeply in love with the people, the purpose, the mission, and eventually the vodka and wine. On my first night in the safe house, the deputy director of the unit I was embedded in, if you can imagine this, it's a lot like what you'd imagine in a movie, right? Bunch of guys gathered around a kitchen table in the safe house. The difference was it was not some rundown ramshackle house. It was a really nice little villa out in the middle of nowhere. But other than that, it was about the same, guns and body armor and medical equipment all over the table and everything. And the deputy director of the unit, Vitaly, pulls out a bottle of Ukrainian vodka. And he slams it down on the table and he says, now we do cultural exchange. And I was like, okay. Is that vodka? I'm not really a vodka guy. He said, no, this is not vodka. This is Horilka. And I said, okay, what's the difference? Vodka is Russian. It can only make you angry. Horilka is Ukrainian, and it opens your mind. And I said, bad vodka memories from college. I'm really not a vodka guy. It's okay. It was not optional. And I had it, and I went, whoa, what is that? He said, I tell you, this is Horilka. It was the smoothest liquor I've ever had in my life. I could not believe it. And so that was my beginning introduction to Ukrainian wine and spirits. Over the next weeks, I lived in the safe house. The only bribes I actually ever paid in Ukraine were to buy wine and spirits because they were illegal to sell in the first months of the war. The whole industry was shut down nationwide. I couldn't believe how good it all was. It absolutely blew my mind. So, the mission was supposed to be like a week. At the end of the week, the team was like, all right, mission accomplished. We've had the meetings and done the training we were supposed to do. Time to head back. And I was like, I think I'm staying. And I wound up hanging out and living about 5 weeks there. And when I eventually came home, I came home with a suitcase full of wine and vodka. And I was thrilled, right? But I get back to the U.S. I kept volunteering for Ukraine for about 5 months. At which point my wife told me that I had to get a job. with income, something about small children. The whole time I was running around the U.S. to all my local wine stores asking for Ukrainian wine and couldn't get it anywhere. Everybody said, man, I don't even know of a distributor that has Ukrainian wine. So I got a new job in the defense industry that would let me refocus my whole life on the war effort and go back and work in Ukraine. So as a result of not being able to find it in the U.S., I did what any respectable American combat veteran would do. I started bootlegging and carrying home suitcase after suitcase on my trips to Ukraine of this outrageous wine and spirits as I learned about their wine and spirits production. By the end of 2022, I was getting tired of that, A. B, starting to realize that this was a real opportunity. And C, had been caught by the Polish border guards several times and had to get screamed at in Polish and talk my way out in English. You can't, I would declare this stuff in the U.S. to customs, but you can't bring more than a liter of alcohol into the EU. You can't just declare it and pay the customs on it. You're just not allowed to do it. So I didn't have a whole lot of choice. And you can't fly out of Ukraine. Well, I mean, you could try. It would end abruptly. But, so I decided to start a company. I reached out to a couple of friends, one who was a volunteer at the Safe House with me, a Ukrainian veteran named Maxim, and David, a former Marine Corps officer who I worked with in the defense industry. I got them together in January 2023, and I said, hey, we need to start a company to bring the best of Ukraine to the United States and give people something to mentally index off of that's not the war, and show the beauty and craftsmanship and traditions of Ukraine to the American public in a different way. And I want to use it to raise funds and fund operations in Ukraine to save lives on the front line. So I went and found a group called Invictus Global Response, which is all American explosive ordnance disposal veterans and combat engineers who go as volunteers to frontline Ukrainian towns and dig up and disarm Russian landmines in the liberated areas. So 15% of all of our profits from both the wines and the vodkas, everything, goes to funding their landmine removal operations. Monty, their director, actually lost his right foot on an anti-personnel mine in Ukraine demining in 2023. He's there on his second long trip back now on his prosthetic. He says he just steps with that foot first and keeps a spare in his bag. Takes a special time. So that's the genesis of SPYRT Worldwide and how this happened. So let's start with the first sparkling wine here, and then we'll get into the PowerPoint, the whole explanation of the vineyard. So this is a sparkling. So to give you the basic idea, SHABO is one of the wineries that I encountered and learned about as we moved into this process. It's a 3,300 acre vineyard. It's in southern Ukraine near Odessa. It's over 200 years old, continuously producing since 1822. This is a sparkling. They make both Charmat and Champenois. This is a Charmat made from a grape called Teltikuk that only exists in Ukraine, and the only original rootstock left of in the world is at this winery. So let me give you a little intro to SHABO. I'm hoping the audio will work on this as well. But Teltikuk, we're going to get way more into it in a little bit. We're actually going to have three things more of Teltikuk. Oh, you know what? We had some IT trouble converted in setting this up. No. We can't play the video because we have to convert it to a PDF to get it onto this. This is at the SHABO Wine Culture Center and Heritage Center, which is on one of their three campuses that make up over 50 acres on the property. give you a tiny little bit of history on the winery. So wine has been made in Ukraine for over 2,500 years. It started with the ancient Greeks, and in that area in southern Ukraine, near what modern-day Moldova, was called Tiras Akar. In the sixth, or in the the 6th to 2nd century BC. In the more modern era, the Ottomans, the Turks, in the 16th century occupied that area. And specifically, that's when winemaking started in this exact spot, right around on these little peninsulas. And it was called Asa-Abad in Turkish, which meant the lower gardens, because it's at sea level. It descends from the higher elevation down to sea level, and there's an enormous amount of groundwater nutrients, both from the Black Sea and the Dniester estuary. Now, SHABO itself, the winery, was founded by Swiss colonists in 1822. There was an expedition to explore the Black Sea region for winemaking by a bunch of Swiss winemakers, 1821 and 1822. And they traveled as a small group in search of good winemaking terroirs. They found the area that is modern-day SHABO, again, at the time, Asa-Abad, which was difficult for the Francophiles to say. And they reported back, and we still have these reports on their journey and what they found. They said, they sent letters back saying, we have found heaven on earth for winemaking. So they went back to Switzerland. They gathered more people. They gathered all their families, and about 80 families in total traveled 3.5 months by horse and carriage to modern-day SHABO. Again, Asa-Abad became Shabad, became SHABO. And they founded the colony of SHABO, which was, as far as we know, the only ever autonomous Swiss winemaking colony. They had their own schools, they had their own churches, they had their own police, they had their own entire colony, and the whole place was just dedicated to winemaking. That was its output. They actually won their first, in only 25 years, which as we know is not long for a winery, they won their first international winemaking awards in 1847 in France. So, I'm sorry, I skipped the slide, but things didn't always last so well, right? After about 100 years, the Soviets took the Odessa region, and they ran it into the ground, frankly. Between 1940 and 1991, this is what the facility had turned into. The terroir was still perfect. There was all the opportunity, but the winery itself had been entirely focused on the Soviet standards of quantity. Zero care about quality. The scary thing is this was still producing wine. Okay. So in 2003, Georgi Ukridze and Vaja Ukridze, a family that had immigrated to Ukraine from Georgia many decades earlier, when the winery came up to be privatized from the old Soviet state-owned structures, bought the facility for the, it sounds low to us, but at the time it was astronomically high price there, $50,000. They mortgaged everything, they sold what they could sell to be able to afford buying the winery. And they bought it and proceeded to start restoring everything they could, both making brandy and wine. And the vision of the family was to make Ukraine, they said, Ukraine has everything for winemaking. Everything you could possibly want. There's no reason Ukraine isn't known as one of the great winemaking countries of the world. So, again, Soviet times, modern times. Everything is buy once, cry once. Everything is excellence in all they do. SHABO is the largest producer of brandy in Ukraine, which is a brandy drinking country. So the tack was to use the brandy making and sell brandy and use that to make money and reinvest into the winemaking. Between 2009 and 2009 and about 2021, the family's put about $115 million into the winemaking facility. And with how far money goes in Ukraine, that's like putting $400 million into something in the U.S. Everything is detail-oriented. You could eat off of the floor of any broom closet in the facility. The core principles of the facility are viticulture, winemaking culture, and wine consumption culture, and sort of understanding how wine fits into society, not just as something to drink, but as something that makes people happy. 1,200 hectares of vineyards. Let's talk a little bit about this. So the grape Celtic Kurok. Real quick, let me go to a map here. So that you can see, here's where SHABO is. This is where Odessa is, just north of here. It's about the same. It's on the same latitude as Burgundy, but it's warmer because it's at sea level, and it gets about 300 days of sun a year, while being sandwiched between the Black Sea and the Dniester estuary. So this is Celtic Kurok grapes that make this Charmat. This is grown in the sand on the banks of the Black Sea. You're going to try 3 different Celtic Kurok-based wines today. This sparkling, and then 2 still ones. You'll notice the acidity, the minerality of this, a little bit of maritime influence. It's going to be a little more obvious on that in the still wines. But this is actually the first sparkling ever to be made from Celtic Kurok grapes. So, folks familiar with phylloxera here? Yeah, phylloxera. Sorry. See?
Sorry.
So phylloxera, this is a pre-phylloxera grape because the phylloxera couldn't dig into the sand and get to the roots. They don't like the sand. So this is from that sandy soil. It exclusively grows in sand on the Black Sea shore in SHABO. So they have vines that are still producing. They go back to 1972. Any questions about anything so far? I want to stop for questions because I'm sure people.
How do you spell? Is it
Number two.
Yeah. This sparkling. That's the still. The sparkling is called Primo Secco because it's a prosecco style made from Celtic Kurok.
So you said it's right there on the shore of the Black Sea. Are there cooling breezes from the Black
Yes.
Sea that grow in that kind of preserve the acidity in the grapes? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
Keep it nice. I mean, that's really interesting about the sandy soil.
Yeah.
The Black Sea, because that like wiped out Spain, France, and
Yep. I mean, wiped out 99% of everything we
Right.
own.
Yeah.
You know, but Celtic Kurok was pretty much totally untouched as a
That was
result.
so interesting.
Because it's one of the only wine grapes that grows in sand.
Yeah. Wow.
And the only place with Celtic Kurok in its original genetic form, not spliced, not not grafted, is SHABO. So SHABO has the only original rootstock of this grape left in the world.
And that's from what date? From the 70s?
They're still producing vines from the 70s, but SHABO has been growing Celtic Kurok for over 200 years. So SHABO is the first and only winery to have protected designation of origin in Ukraine, both from Europe and from the Ukrainian government. They have over 4 million vines on site. Yeah. A good chunk of that goes to, yeah, I've actually seen that one. A good chunk of it goes to brandy, and a bunch goes to wine. The wine, or the brandy, the wine is the passion, but the brandy keeps the lights on. SHABO has about a 35% market share of the brandy market in Ukraine. They sell about 1 million bottles of brandy a month. The brandy grapes are machine harvested. All of the wines you're trying tonight are all hand harvested. Still and sparkling are 100% hand harvested. More than 20 different grape varieties. We talked a little bit about Teltikor, but now you can actually see the grape. So in the original Turkish, where the name comes from, Teltikor means foxtail. You see how it bushes out and then tapers rapidly, just like the tail of a red fox. So that's where the name of the wine comes from. So one of SHABO's big beliefs is that wine is born in the vineyard. Anybody familiar with Stéphane Darencourt from France? Yeah. Yep. He's been a consultant with SHABO on their viticulture for over 15 years. He's been working with them since before 2010. This is Georgi, the owner of SHABO. And he always likes to recount the story that when he first brought Stéphane in 2010 to SHABO, and they were driving into the facility, they stopped. Wait a minute. Yes, that's it. Stéphane said, wait, what are you doing? Where are you taking me? He said, I'm taking you to the winery. He said, I have nothing to do in the winery. Take me to the vineyard. Said, I don't believe that there's anything I can do for you. And ever since then, Stéphane has been a key consultant in the winemaking. This is Olga, the head winemaker of SHABO. There's actually the team of lead winemakers. It's not by design, it happens to be all women. 7 female winemakers at the winery. The winery has about 1,200 employees on site. So now, let's taste the Teltikoro, the reserve Teltikoro. Good night. So this is Teltikoro by itself, totally unadulterated with anything. It's not aged, it doesn't touch oak. This is Teltikoro in stainless steel. And the idea of it is to give you an idea of what this grape is by itself, without trying to soften it, without trying to modify it with oak. There are several levels above this, one of which we'll try tonight. But really, this will give you an idea of the terroir, both the grape and the terroir, pretty clearly. Anybody have any questions about the Teltikoro? Mm-hmm.
So is this number 4 on this?
This is number 2. Yeah. Yeah, to be clear, the first one was the Primo Secco, the sparkling. This one is the Teltikoro. Same grapes. Anybody have any guesses or any thoughts on what grapes this compares to? Because this is always fun because everyone has different answers. Yeah, we've had some master somms who say, I give up. This is totally new to me, different from anything else I've ever tried. That's one thing. It's got a little bit of Chenin Blanc. It's got a little Chardonnay on the end. It's got,
To me, it's a mix of black and white Syrah. So I say a mix of, yeah.
White
I have a
Syrah?
white one at home right now.
I want to see that.
So is it a Saperavi produced in a wet wine style, or the grape mutated and it became a bouquet?
Because the fruit in Saperavi is red, so it's traditionally considered one of the only white wines you can't make white wine from. It's not just the skin. Any thoughts? Any questions? No?
Very good. The nose is so interesting.
It's like Chenin Blanc had a baby with Verdicchio.
Okay, that's a great way to describe it.
Interesting. I've heard that one.
Have they done they figured out?
I'm sorry?
Have they figured out?
It's like, that's
I
not.
mean, it goes down to has healthy quota longer than the recorded. Domain record.
Other great varieties that options for this.
Could it, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are some grapes that I think they know of that are partially derived from
I know this nose, but I can't smell this before. Yes, that's what it's reminding me of, the Greek wines.
The superpower,
That's
the going joke is that the superpower of Delta Kuruk is food pairing. That it pairs with almost anything. That it's much, much, much easier to make a list of what it won't pair well with than what it will.
Okay, we're saying it reminds us of red seeds and cherry breeze.
Interesting.
So red
Okay.
seed, a little bit of a tar maybe?
I have that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah, fine. Well, we may not hear from it, but that's a different grape.
So,
The
whole-
This is so fascinating.
isn't it? It's crazy, isn't it?
This is awesome.
So all of the heat on this is another thing that makes SHABO different from everybody else. 100% of the heat throughout the entire facility comes from this boiler house, this boiler, which was designed by engineers hired by SHABO. It's one of one in the world, about to be one of two, because they're getting a second one. And the entire boiler house is run off vine clippings from that 3,300 acres, 4 million boxes, which makes them energy independent for heating. And they're working to convert in their power plant more and more of that into power for the entire
For the whole
facility.
country.
Well, it's not quite enough grapes for that, but
We need to work on that.
SHABO produces a really wide range of wines, from around $15-ish a bottle range, all the way up to about $600 a bottle. They have different parts of the facility dedicated to each of these efforts, right? This, for example, is the fine red wine facility, where Grand Reserve and above are fermented. We'll get into that in a little bit. Remember these 5,000-liter Terransad oak vats from France. That room alone, they put over $5 million in equipment. So these are, you're going to try one of these. I think our last wine was made, for tonight, is made in one of these facilities, or in this facility. From the Grand Reserve and up level of SHABO wines, everything is fermented in oak. Not only aged in oak, but fermented in temperature-controlled oak vats. These things are enormous. I mean, numerous people can stand inside each one. And all of the grape crushing in them is done by batonnage. Any questions about fermentation? Crushing with by hand with big poles. Yeah.
Okay.
Red and white.
No, so that one's for red. White is fermented in oak as well.
No, I
But
mean the crushing.
yes, but the white is fermented in much smaller tanks. Anybody familiar with Quevery winemaking from Georgia? We don't have one of these tonight because we literally sold out of every single one of these that we have in the U.S. We have new containers being unloaded as we speak in New Jersey. But they make wines in these about 10-foot tall clay vats where wine is fermented, stems and all, in the base of these vats, which are buried to their neck in the ground to control temperature and humidity throughout the year. And it's fermented and aged in the clay, which allows for some oxidation and gives the wine really unique texture and flavor. So if you're not familiar with Georgian wines, this is a... Right. They have, SHABO has a riccatatelli. Really incredible Georgian-style wines made with Kirketian technology. Let's move on to the Chardonnay. Any other questions so far? When were you in Chief? Back and forth last week.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not just a random.
Yeah, she told me.
I don't think so.
No?
But that's funny you said the reality of this one. Yeah. Time and again.
Okay. I don't work out meetings.
Okay. So it was in Cheshire.
Yeah.
Across the Cheshire, take a tree.
Yeah, I sometimes stay overnight just for that. But I don't think I've ever stayed in Cheshire.
Basically, it's like TLDR is military outfit to wine.
Oh.
Yeah, I went as a volunteer about 5 weeks. I worked for Ministry of Strategic Defense.
This is fast.
Yeah, I got sick and tired of not being able to create wine and phone with in the US.
I'm actually surprised about that. Where are you here from?
I was born in DC proper, in the Northwest, and then grew up mostly in the coast.
I was Rockville. I was born in Bethesda, grew up in Rockville.
Oh.
So, like, I was going to say, I was like, wondering, which I'm very surprised because I'm like, you can go to the Rockville, like, the Montgomery County is a really high humanitarian population, and they sell them. So, you kind of say, the DMV, like, very close to, like,
Well,
very
depends on where.
Good to you, Johnson.
Yeah,
Yes.
depends on where.
Only Ukrainian restaurant. Still the same.
Yeah, so like my friends, they're very good.
I'm just taking a look.
Very good.
I thought he was busy talking.
My friends are very good.
Didn't, I'm not a big drinker. A lot of Polish vodka. A little bit Ukrainian alcohol.
We avoid that too.
Mine is gone.
And Ukrainian spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some of the national imports. For the US.
Nice infantry.
We're working on it. And all of our products from all of this fund. Global response. Okay, so now everybody's getting poured the reserve Chardonnay. Now in the reserve line, there are a few different lines of SHABO. Let's talk about this. In the original line, the original collection is like the gateway drug to SHABO. And I'm not going to give prices now. I was told to hold off on that. The reserve collection is higher up, and this is from the reserve. This is still fermented in stainless steel, but aged 6 months and over. The Telti Kuruk only starts in the reserve collection, which is what you just had, but that doesn't touch it. So this is 6 months in second-year oak barrels. SHABO at any given time has over 2,000 French oak barrels on the property. New French oak is mostly used for Grand Reserve and above, and for experiments and the reserve line, it's mostly second-year French oak. So SHABO does both international varieties, Ukrainian varieties, Georgian varietals, etc. They have a pretty good mix. SHABO is all about balance. They're desperately afraid of over-oaking. So you won't find any SHABO wines that are like California Chardonnays. If you like the super heavy, like drinking the tree, California Chardonnays, you're not going to find that with this. This is the opposite.
Do you happen to know how old barrels are? Are they neutral oak or do they use it?
Second year.
This is the second year for this. Yep. So for the reserve wine, mostly second year. Yeah, I can't hear out this year. But for the reserve wine, mostly second year. For Grand Reserve and above, almost exclusively first year, with a few exceptions. This is the house of sparkling wines that you saw that Primo Secco first came from. So this facility has both Charmat and Champenois winemaking. If you look at this brick, this is all made. There was a ruined castle in Lviv that had completely collapsed from the 1700s. SHABO bought all of the brick remnants of the collapsed castle and used it to build the house of sparkling wine. SHABO's idea, with their hundreds of years of history in winemaking, is to blend the best of Ukrainian heritage and terroir and traditions with the most modern winemaking capabilities. So this is a facility made out of the bricks of a fallen castle, and here in the front is an atomic clock, one of the only ones in Ukraine, the most accurate clock in Ukraine, set into the face of a hundreds of year old ruin. Here's the Charmat facility with all the tanks. As you can see, this is massive. I mean, the scale is I've spent a lot of time walking these catwalks. The scale is ridiculous. And then the Champenois. This is where the brandy is made, the distillery. So this is huge continuous column stills. They go way out of the picture. And that's where they make that over 1 million bottles a month of brandy. No, the brandy is made from a number of different grapes. Any questions on any of these parts so far? Any thoughts on the Chardonnay?
Well, the Chardonnay is beautiful, and so a lot of times if they didn't know, you put it through a malolactic fermentation.
Yes. So SHABO does use malolactic all the way down to the entry level on the Chardonnay to take a little of that edge off. Yes, they do use malolactic.
It's just, I'm not picking up that, like, give you some big buttery, it just, it's beautiful.
Yeah, very delicate Chardonnay. Any other questions, notes from the back? I don't want to ignore folks from back here.
Big Joe sit in the back.
Nope? Okay. So as you go up in the SHABO wines, the collections are original, reserve, limited edition, which is where they play around with experiments and where they do the Georgian style amphora or equivary wines. Grand Reserve, which we're going to get into more as we get into those wines. And then the family collection. The family collection, until 2 months ago, could only be bought by going to Odessa and going to the winery. And that's a whole different level. That starts in the hundreds of dollars a bottle price range, but is truly extraordinary. This is the family tasting room, where family collection wines are actually made in a room next door bottles. They go through this room on a conveyor belt along the wall and into cellaring, immediately through the glass next to this room. And SHABO offers cellaring boxes for people who want to buy that, where they will taste the wines once every year, and when a wine is at its peak, automatically send it to you. It's a really extraordinary operation.
Is the winery okay, like all this war going on around?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm surprised nobody's asked that yet.
I was thinking it, I was thinking it.
Everyone's thinking,
Right.
wondering.
All right. So let me talk about that a little bit. So SHABO is SHABO is about 70 kilometers south of Odessa, on the shore of the Black Sea. It's right on the other side of the Dniester estuary, which is a big freshwater estuary. That's just south of Odessa. The ground fighting in Ukraine is significantly east of there, about 150 miles. When the invasion started, they got to the town of Mykolaiv, and the Russians were fighting at Mykolaiv for a significant period of time. That's only about a 2-hour drive away. But in 2022, in the Kherson counteroffensive, the Ukrainians pushed the Russians back across the Dnipro River, and that has become sort of the end point. Neither side can cross the river effectively, and so there's really no risk from ground fighting. Air attacks are a different matter. Odessa does come under air attack almost every day. Unfortunately, there's a fairly strategic ridge right across the Dniester estuary. 3 of the 4 lanes of that ridge have been taken out by Russian missile strikes. So the only traffic allowed across that bridge is military. And so to get to SHABO from Odessa, it's about a 2-hour drive. You have to go around the estuary. You go for about 5 minutes through Moldova, technically. And it's a pain, especially if you forgot your passport. Ask me how I know that. Drone strikes happen. The Russians continue to try to hit that bridge. Ones that miss fly right over and are headed straight at SHABO. In 2024, they had about 6 Russian drones. They're called Shaheeds. They're Iranian designed drones. Crash or get shot down on SHABO's territory. Nothing has hit any significant infrastructure, and most importantly, nobody has gotten seriously injured or killed. In 2024, there was 1 minor injury of 1 worker at the viticulture center who was back at work the next day. So nothing that can't be fixed or replanted. When you have 3,300 acres of grapes, it's not that hard to dig up a bunch of earth, replant a few rows, you're back in business. It's not a big deal. Yeah, so if anybody wants to see, I did bring this little visual aid to touch and see. This is part of a KH-101 missile shot down over Kyiv by a U.S. Patriot system. We are actually trying to see if we can get fragments and damaged Russian ordnance that's recovered from SHABO to turn over to artists in Ukraine, so that we can create art out of it and use that to auction off to raise money for the landmine removal experts that we work with. So we mentioned the wine culture center at SHABO. This is one of the 200-year-old wine cellars from the Swiss colonists that's still in use at the facility. They use these cellars for a whole bunch of different things, from storing brandy and wine to contemporary art exhibits and historical expositions. In this particular one, they bring in famous Ukrainian sculpture artists to build or to sculpt displays. They have all these masks that are each designed to show off that artist's interpretation of either a season or a varietal of grape grown at SHABO. So this is the Grand Reserve Telti-Kuruk, and this is the first Grand Reserve wine you're having. It comes from that fine wine center. So, as opposed to the Reserve, let me give you an idea of the difference here. When you get into the Reserve level wines, they're harvested at dawn and carried in refrigerated trucks to the wine center in small boxes that hold no more than 12 kilograms of grapes, so that the grapes don't crush each other in transit. When you get into the Grand Reserve collection, I mean, they're truly only harvested at dawn to control residual sugar production. They go, the drive back to the winery is only 15 to 30 minutes. And they're in refrigeration that whole time. Then the grapes that are destined for Grand Reserve, and actually let me go back a step. For the Grand Reserve micro parcels, where they expect the wine to go into Grand Reserve wines, the vines are pruned dramatically down to 75 or 80% less than their nominal yield to force all of those nutrients and minerals up into the remaining 20 to 25% of the grapes. So from a vine that you would normally get 8 to 10 kilos of grapes from, you're only getting about 2 kilos of yield for the Grand Reserve. They're all older grapes. Average root depth is 5 meters. So deep, deep roots. Once they get back to the winery, all the Grand Reserve level wines go through 3 levels of sorting of the grapes, where the bunches are sorted and separated on stem separation vibratory tables. And they have to go through 3 cycles. But after that, they go into a machine. Has anybody here ever heard of the company Vaseline Boucher out of Switzerland? It's a grape sorting machine, yeah. There's less than 30 wineries in the world that have one of these machines that measures every single grape according to preset parameters by size, shape, and weight. All the rejects either go to lower lines of wine or brandy, depending on how bad the defect is. But every single grape is selected. The machine costs about $1 million with initial setup. So that's why very few places have it. But every single Grand Reserve and above grape at SHABO goes through that Vaseline Boucher machine. Then, this is fermented in 500-liter temperature-controlled barrels of new French oak before being moved for aging for 10 months in new French oak 228-liter barrels. Depending on the year and exactly and how much all the oak, by the way, is a medium to minus medium char. Depending on how that oak is interacting for that year, they may use not 100% barreling in new French oak. They can use 20% or so second year oak to soften it down.
Sam, how old did you say those vines were?
For Telti-Kuruk, back to 1972.
Okay.
The 1972 vines are currently
50,
yielding
years old, yeah.
about 700 grams of grapes per vine. And that goes into the family collection, Telti-Kuruks. So the Telti-Kuruks, it doesn't, the family collection is not every year, it's only the years where the harvest is deemed worthy. But there are Telti-Kuruks at the $500-600.
Nice.
So this wine culture center and wine museum of both SHABO's history, Ukrainian winemaking history, and the history of wine consumption has been included on the European Council's cultural heritage sites map as a protected place. This is one of the tasting rooms you go to at the end of the tour. Before the invasion, SHABO would host about 70,000 tours a year in 5 languages other than Ukrainian. Russian, English, French, German, and Chinese.
Oh,
Mandarin, yeah.
not Italian or Spanish.
Nope.
Interesting. You're on your own.
This is the kind of stuff you find throughout SHABO. This is actually an art installation that's a fountain Anybody know the Bellagio fountains?
Yeah.
So this is a water and light show fountain with music. You walk in and there's a ring around the inside of this, and there's interpretive art, fountain displays with lights and music showing the fermentation process inside the oak barrels, showing different grape varietals, etc. Any questions about that? Yes?
How many different wines do they make?
About 85.
85.
Yeah, they have about 20 different grapes from which, between different collections and different winemaking processes, they make about 85 different wines. We're importing about 35 of them so far.
So they're blended.
Some of them are blended, some of it's just different winemaking processes. Yes.
So that I don't have to start my own bootlegging, if I want friends outside of Fredericksburg, Virginia, to try these wines, how do they try?
We're standing up distribution in about 10 more states right now. There's also sales available online, and I don't know, do you sell online?
She will.
You're going to? Okay,
She
awesome.
will. Right, we
So, City Vino.
Right, we?
I can sell online. I can ship within the state of Virginia.
Okay, so outside of Virginia, if you go to our website, you'll see some folks that will ship, I think, to 44 states right now. So because the general reaction I get from a lot of people who have not been to Ukraine is, when this comes up, is Ukraine makes wine? Right? And so in trying to put SHABO on the international stage, SHABO has gone to great lengths, and Georgia has gone to great lengths to show off SHABO around the world. They only participate in major national and international level wine competitions. Decanter, Mundus Vindi, International Wine Challenge, New York Wine Competition, San Francisco, Asia Wine Trophy, Berliner Wine Festival, etc. WSWA in the US, and has received over 600 international awards from these. They actually have halls just coated with them all the way through their sub-basement level where the fermentation is done, and they've run out of room, so they have a room where they're stacked high with them. Before I forget, any questions or any notes on the Grand Reserve Del Ticuro? Does everybody notice how different this is? Wildly different from the Reserve Del Ticuro? Because of the aging in oak and the fermentation in oak, aging in oak, grape selection, everything that we talked about. Yeah. So the Grand Reserve Del Ticuro this is a good time to talk about this. This was the first Ukrainian wine served internationally in Michelin-starred restaurants in London and Paris. 2 in Paris, 1 in London were the first Michelin listings for SHABO and for any Ukrainian winery. This is one, if anybody knows of the City Vino in Bordeaux, they try to exhibit the best wines of every winemaking country that they deem worthy of it. At the Bordeaux Wine Museum, the only Ukrainian winery shown and exhibited and sold is SHABO, and this is one of the 2 SHABO wines sold and exhibited in the City Vino.
Before we leave here, share the story on how you got the rights to send it to the United States.
Oh, yeah. So, as you can imagine, not being a wine guy, being like a military and defense industry guy, when I said, well, I want to import wine, I would get some pretty skeptical looks from winemakers, right? And so the first winery that I wound up meeting with is a tiny little Ukrainian winery called Father's Wine in an oblast region called Ternopil, which is about partway between Kyiv and Lviv in western Ukraine. And I met with them, tried their wines, and they said, this is just, this is wonderful. We love your vision. We want to support this. But we're just a little winery. We can't do this at the scale you're talking about and reach the levels you're talking about. We want to work with you, but we can't do it at that level. I said, okay, well, what do I need to do? They said, you need to talk to SHABO. And I said, okay, well, how would I do that? I said, we're friends with SHABO. We'll set up a dinner. And so I went to a dinner in Kyiv with the head of Father's Wine, Oksana, and Georgi Ukrainian, who you saw on the PowerPoint. Georgi was sick and tired of people trying to take advantage of Ukraine or Ukraine being the shiny toy that the West wants to add another country that people know about to their repertoire. So we sat down at a wonderful restaurant, Kyiv, ordered some wine, and then Georgi proceeded to interrogate me for 3 hours. Asking me why I was doing this, what my intentions were, what my background was, what it was I was trying to do. And we talked business philosophy and the mission and what we were trying to do, both for understanding the United States and for Ukraine. And by the end of the dinner, Georgi said, I don't care that you've never done this. We're going to work together. That's it. And so that's how we became the exclusive distributor or importer of SHABO in the United States. That was over wine. Although I will tell you, at this restaurant you might have been there, beef. Beef. They had just done a complete rehash of their wine list, and neither SHABO or Father's Wine was on the menu. If you want to see two winemakers fight with each other about other people's wine, it's interesting. Trying to pick what to order with this.
Yeah, can we get through patient then?
No, we all want to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before you go into the rest, I wanted to ask about the Celtic Foro.
Yes, please.
So with the reserve and all the ones that we've tried with that, there were no blends, right?
Correct.
And they're saying that the roots go down
5 meters.
5 meters into sandy soil.
Limestone, well, yeah. The terroir of SHABO in general is limestone, clay, but yeah, the Celtic Foro is almost entirely sand.
Okay. That's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're all on.
That is a sand wine, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, the terms Reserva and Grand Reserva are decided by the winemaker, not by the wine law.
Correct. So this is a Reserve Merlot. So like the Reserve Chardonnay, 6 months on second-year-old French oak. Again, this is something you can compare more apples to apples with Merlots you've had and see the kind of obsessive compulsive attention to detail that goes into it.
There is a freshness to this Merlot that I don't normally get. That's the only way I can describe it, fresh. I mean, it's, you can say it. Yeah. Color is beautiful.
Yes, sir.
Is this 100% Merlot?
This is 100% Merlot, yeah.
It's very purple. It's not like a hollow.
Yeah, the terroir is so different that it really results, you get some different results. You definitely get some different results with a lot of different things. Yeah, the Merlot, the Reserve Merlot is very popular. If any of you guys are flying, it's not competition for City Vino, but if any of you guys are flying out of Dulles anytime soon, the reserve, the Primo Secco, the reserve Telti-Kuruk, and the reserve Merlot are all sold at Vino Volo at Dulles Airport.
No, I didn't do one there. Forget about it.
See you, Rita.
Rita's prices are much better. But if you're about to fly and you'd like a glass of wine, you know, it's probably the best place to go.
Can you tell us about the marijuana, of the marijuana? Is it the same?
It's not the same. So, you know, it's loamy limestone here. Let me go to the mining. By the way, if any of you want to come to see this book, we call this the SHABO. I'm very proud of that. That was my idea. Yeah, they called it the catalog. I said, but 7 types of soil subprofiles across the area. So I mean, it's depending on where you are on. You know, it's such a large facility. It can be quite different. And I can show you a map. Actually, if you want to pass this around while we're going, let me do this. Please feel free to pass this around. This is a map of SHABO, and it's microplots and 20 different types of grape grown in SHABO. That's all SHABO's plots. Yeah. Any other questions? No? The mission of the winery is to put Ukraine on the wine map of the world. Let me talk about that a little bit. So the U.S. is behind. The U.S. is behind it. The U.S. is the 27th country SHABO has exported to. For many years, a number of American companies, most notably Total Wine, was trying to get SHABO to import to the U.S. exclusively with them, and they weren't interested in being one more country on the list of a massive company to get lost in a bin in the back of a store. SHABO's feeling was that they were better than that, and they wanted to be listed along with the best wines of the world, and somebody would carry them, put them in restaurants, put them in bars, etc. Up until 2 months ago, you could get SHABO in Cape Town, South Africa. You could get SHABO in Copenhagen, in London, in Paris, in Tokyo, in Tel Aviv, all over the world. The 28th country now, after the U.S., is now South Korea. And SHABO is now available in Seoul and many other cities. But yeah, the U.S. was kind of late to the game on this.
Did we say thank you?
I mean,
But Rita was right there. Rita was not late to the game.
No, read. This is the first place in Fredericksburg to sell and serve SHABO wine, by the way.
See? Yay.
Yeah.
Trendsetter.
No, we're really happy about this.
This is so
The first place in Fredericksburg. Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I think the first place in this county, in the whole surrounding county. Yeah.
Like Fredericksburg, Stafford,
Yeah,
King George.
I think so. Yeah.
Planning District 16.
Yes, you have a question?
The first place in the U.S. Do you know what the first state in the U.S.?
I can tell you exactly where the first store was. If anybody's ever been up to Montclair and gone to Wine Styles, I live right by there, and that's my local wine shop. So as I was getting out on this mission, I went, man, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I should probably go talk to somebody that I know who knows a lot more about wine than I do. And I got a very skeptical look from Arthur, the owner. And then he told me to bring the wines in, and he tried them. And he said, do you understand how good this is? And I said, yeah, I think so. That's why I'm doing it. He said, do you have a distributor? I said, not yet. I wanted to ask your opinion on that. He picked up the phone, he called his favorite distributor, Well Crafted, and said, I have a new wine for you. You need to meet with these people today. And within 24 hours, we were signed up with a new distributor. I said, I don't know how to thank you. He said, I do. Let me be the first shop in the U.S. to carry your wine. So I said, okay, done.
And read it once, be the second.
We do SPYRT Worldwide. We have some interesting brand ambassadors. We're, again, a little different than your usual wine import company. Our first brand ambassador, who has had an over 10-year love affair with SHABO wines, is U.S. Ambassador Kurt Volker, who is former U.S. Ambassador to NATO and former U.S. Special Representative to Ukraine. And on diplomatic delegations to Ukraine over the years, when sometimes everybody else would go back to Poland and he would disappear and go down to Odessa, say, never mind, I've got something else to do, and he would go learn winemaking at SHABO. He and his wife own a small winery in Georgia, and he was mentored by Georgi for many years. So when he found out that finally SHABO was coming to America, he said, what do I need to do? So we call him our brand ambassador. Our other brand ambassador, big supporter of Ukrainian sovereignty and freedom, is Lieutenant Colonel William Swenson, the 6th Medal of Honor recipient of the Global War on Terror, who travels, works with us in the military sphere, everything like that. Here's another listing of some of SHABO's awards. This is just Berliner Wine Trophy 2022, just a few examples. Bundesvindig, Decanter. I don't know the names of the ones in London and Paris, but we just got our first SHABO Michelin star listing in DC, which is at Imperfecto by Enrique Lamardo. Imperfecto brought on board one of SHABO's top-of-the-line sparklings, which is a Method Champenois, 100% Chard, single varietal, single vintage, 2016, 100% Chardonnay. Bottled in 2016, degorgeage done in December 2024, so 8 years in the bottle. And so that's now available at that restaurant or here at City Vino if you want to order.
So, something City Vino will have.
City Vino can get anything in this portfolio that you would like.
Man, she is having
No, this is Saperavi. So is anybody here familiar with Saperavi? Saperavi, anyone? Anybody familiar with Saperavi? Okay, we got a few. This is actually a more Saperavi crowd than I'm used to. Often I will bring up Saperavi and no one in the crowd has had Saperavi. So Saperavi is a traditionally Georgian grape, and is used to and is generally associated with Georgian wineries. But because the Kridze family that owns SHABO emigrated to Ukraine from Georgia, one of the ways they pay tribute to their Georgian ancestry is by using Saperavi grapes. Grapes grown in Ukraine, but from original Georgian roots. For those who are not familiar with Saperavi, the name Saperavi literally translates to the one that gives color. And the fruit itself is pink. The red in this does not just come from skin contact. So if you want to turn this and take a look at the edge and take a look at the color, swirl it around in your glass and watch it stain your glass. And your teeth. I was about to say that. Guess what else it stains? But it is one of the reddest of red wines. Yes?
Instead of the pink grape?
The fruit itself is pinkish red, yeah. So,
Does this need to age maybe, or could it benefit?
not at this level, not really. It's just a very unique grape. We get strong reactions from this sort of across the board, but it's hard to drink by itself. It's usually paired with like a really meaty steak or something like that.
So, this one actually reminds me, in a way, of some reds that I had in Romania. But the Romanians like the reds sweet.
Right. And SHABO does do some sweet wines and some experiments.
I don't like them sweet.
Yeah, we've not been aborting that. Yes, sir.
We did recommend pairing this with
With what? Hammock.
Meaty, yummy.
Yeah, what are people's thoughts for those who have not had saparavis before?
I like.
Doesn't taste done. Tastes unfinished.
Yeah, for some palates, saparavi just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan.
Tastes like done.
Yeah.
They took it out. They took it out.
Yeah.
Juicy. It's not done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no expert. This tastes like my wine.
You said, at one point you said it was very important, the pairing of foods and wine.
Yes.
I'm curious about what would pair.
A big, like a ribeye. You know, a big, flavorful, fatty steak is. I'm personally not like a lot of my friends. Saparavi is one of their favorites, and they love this. For me, like I'm good with it, but with the steak. But I can't drink this by itself on a regular basis.
Mushrooms, and, it's like, steak with the mushrooms.
Yes, sir.
How much of these wines are bought in Ukraine?
What do you mean? Oh, a lot.
Okay.
So now the problem with SHABO in Ukraine is that their wines are 3 to 4 times the cost of everything else.
Yeah.
At minimum.
But the reason I'm asking is what would go good with it. What is the cuisine of Ukraine?
Borscht is the national.
Borscht or stuffed cabbage or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know about pairing with. I don't know enough about Ukrainian cuisine to be able to say pairing notes with.
Strong sausages, strong pierogi,
Yeah,
strong pierogi, very strong pierogi.
Think about a good cabbage, food, like Borscht type of
I
thing.
mean, any strong pierogi.
Yeah.
The meat's popular. Roasting, a lot of fresh, mostly sausages. Any kind of sausage, not just sausage, any kind of pie.
You've been in Ukraine?
Okay. So now we're headed into our last wine of the night. So this last wine of the night is going to be the other one of SHABO's wines that's currently sold and exhibited at the City Vino in Bordeaux. And this should say something. It's SHABO's Bordeaux blend. The City Vino, in their infinite wisdom, are selling a Ukrainian Bordeaux blend. So this is 82% Cabernet, 18% Merlot. Separately fermented, no, separately aged. They go through that whole process. Picked at dawn, small crates, refrigeration of the winery, 3 rounds of sorting, Vaseline Boucher, $1 million grape sorting machine, fermentation and oak, and then in this case, over a year of aging in New Frenchman.
Do they grow any other grapes in Ukraine, or just capped off and Merlot?
They have a little cup. Is it up front? Grown in Bordeaux?
Yes, excellent.
Up front?
And Petit Verdot
I think they do actually.
and Malbec.
No Malbec.
So those are those 5 Yeah, caps on, keep your head.
So give this some air. Give this a little room to breathe in your class.
Yeah. Right, I'm gonna have sushi. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the caps
Yes. That's very kind.
Don't sell yourself as a
I'm trying. I've been on a crash course for 2 years. So, and my mentor is Yorgi. So, I actually have a different job in the defense world, working on the war effort, and I go and then I take vacation time from my job in Ukraine and travel to SHABO and learn wine. You know,
Yeah, I've been to a lot of places around there. You were doing things.
my happy thing is trains. I don't have any green zone. You know, so I have no restrictions. So I can go anywhere I want. Only because of free. And then OEC and Paul Mill asked me to come in and brief them on the police.
Which islands are
Exactly. And sorry.
I'm sure.
We'll talk.
What is the red?
great. Would you like us?
The most probably. I don't know. Saperavi and Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, all they have a lot of. You know, they do a really interesting in the Carpathian style, the amphora wines. Actually, Rita loved. We were totally sold out of it, but Rita loved the Quevery and the clay wine. That's 60% Merlot, 40% Saperavi, 6 months fermented and aged in those clay vats. It's really good.
When are we getting more?
If anybody specific wants to have a little taste, I do have a bottle first.
That's Saperavi.
Yeah. See, strong reaction on the Saperavi. It's about 75% of it, 25% of it. Exactly.
I have a non-blind.
Yes, go ahead.
Sort of non-blind. What? Years ago, we were in Serbia and had peach brandy. I think it was peach brandy. Oh, melted concrete. That's all I was telling you. Decades ago. Okay, we're old. What makes it was melted concrete? It was homemade, and it's what they drank because they could make it themselves. But what defines something as being brandy? That was like I heard all sorts of different kinds of fruits. This brandy, that.
All right. I'm going to use Lifeline for a friend. Anybody? Any brandy experts here?
What makes it brandy?
No, it's just.
No, it's distilled. It's distilled. It's distilled.
I know
But,
that.
yeah.
This peach brandy was totally distilled. It, like I said, it would
I don't know anything. I've never heard of or tasted speech brandy.
Maybe it was apricot brandy, but they would take whatever fruit they had.
All I know about brandy comes from SHABO, and it's all great.
And they would take any fruit they had and make brandy.
Interesting.
And they called it brandy, but I don't know if there's a definition.
No idea.
Well, I will. What is
I apologize.
The AI says that it's made from fermented juice distilled from wine or fruit mash,
Or fruit mash.
Got it.
aged in wood, and has an ABV of at least 35 and up to 60.
So,
That was probably 80 or 90.
a quick note on this Grand Reserve Cabernet Merlot. So Grand Reserve and above, different corks, meant for bottle aging too. This is extremely young. It may not taste like this, but this is a 2023. Right, which it does not taste like. But Grand Reserve and above, especially the reds, you know, this is going to mature in your wine cellar for another 10 years.
Is this the temperature you want?
Maybe
Or you
longer.
want it a little warmer? I usually think the running red's a little warmer than this.
You know, the old standard is room temperature in London, back from when London was 60 degrees. So the general recommendation is around, you know, it's a little bit chill, a little, but different. But there's no wrong answers in wine. You have it the way you want it.
Yeah, it's not very lazy. It's like dry your mouth. It's very like mild.
Oh, you know, no, right. If you have their 100% cab, that's exactly what you want. Right, exactly. So your lowest soft, you try the 100% cab, and it's going to be in the mouth. All right. Well, there's a Grand Reserve 100% cab. That's exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Well, everything that SHABO's got out. It's not about hitting you with this or
Very much
that.
like a table.
You probably noticed that across all of it. Yeah, you know, there was like one sim and that. It's not about working on extremes. It's about the best measured, you know. Yeah. I mean, the Chardonnay. I think they don't like Chardonnay. The SHABO Chardonnay, they don't like this And this is probably the most developed in that region. It's the only $700 million in that region, right? And it's discovered by but now
I shouldn't take anything.
That's right. You go all over London, you go to any nice restaurant.
It's not just great. All of the Eastern and Central.
Oh yeah.
Vino, that's
Right. That's right.
How do these wines, how do you get them? Are they coming in and?
That's a great question. So this is another one of the key questions that we generally get. How do you get wine out of the war zone? We load everything on trucks. We drive it to Moldova, and from Moldova it either goes by ship or goes to another port in the EU, where it's shipped to the east coast of the U.S.
It's just standard containers or are they?
Refrigerated containers. 100% refrigerated containers. We actually have 3 containers that were offloaded this week, getting loaded on trucks to come to Virginia and a few other places today. So wait until one of the ones you guys didn't get to try is at the entry level in the original collection. They have a rosé. You got to try the rosé, right?
So,
Yeah, 100% Pinot Noir rosé, free-run juice. It's ridiculous. So yeah, there's a whole portfolio there. Yes.
Do you import the Cab Franc?
You know, the Cab Franc is used for a couple of the experimental things. I don't think there is 100% Cab Franc yet. I think there's like, there's a couple of blends that use the Cab Franc, but I don't think they've done a dedicated Cab Franc yet.
Okay.
did Well Crafted pick up the Viognier?
No, not yet.
Is it in the States? Is the Viognier in the
No,
States?
no. I don't know what the Viognier is used in. I haven't seen a straight Viognier. So I'll have to ask. They have so many little projects and special editions and everything. Like 85 wines is like their main selection.
Well, being Virginia, we do a lot of Viognier here, and so it's not it's not an unknown. We would absolutely.
That's a good point. We should talk about that.
So if everything,
Yes.
we're going to drink question on Moldova.
Yeah.
You said that's how you actually distribute it?
Well, we load it in Ukraine. We move it to Moldova, and then either out of there or a nearby port it comes by ship.
So does Moldova have a port on the Black Sea?
Not on the Black Sea.
I didn't think so. Aren't they landlocked?
Well, wait. I'm sorry, just south of Detroit. No, it goes into the EU and then out of the EU.
It's mostly what
We do it all by on some of the former Soviet republics, there is a rail line from SHABO that runs all large.
Then they say because the rail lines are all protected very well.
Oh, I know electrification. I'm very familiar with that. You know, yeah, he was the head of the rail line, and then he became the district. Oh, no, so SHABO does, in still and sparkling wines, SHABO probably does, I think, 6 million bottles a year.
Oh,
Is that all?
yes.
Yeah.
Slackers. That's awesome.
Yeah, 'cause it's about 12 million of brandy, and we do about 18 million bottles.
That's a whole bunch.
Yeah,
It's like
like I said,
comparing
in
Johnson
the
against,
world, this is the
say,
only winery. This developed.
Chris, compare Kinshasa against Suba. How big is Suba?
Oh, it's incredible. When it was the mile was the front line, and as soon as that's all access.
That is my understanding. It's like because they just had to force themselves to the British.
Yeah. No, it's an awesome.
Portugal.
So I organized the trip for him to SHABO. He just got to spend 2 he's partners with him. So he's partners, they're tied together, operating out of the same place in Ukraine. So I organized their and so I organized the trip for all of that.
I was just curious. Pointed out that all these different varieties.
Any other questions?
The one,
Anything else?
the one that's really.
Do you know the current administration's tariff level for Ukraine?
10%. Hopefully to go
Well,
less than
that's
that.
our license,
But
just reminded me. of
10%. We're pretty much unaffected by the tariffs right now. And as a reminder, Ukraine is not part of the EU. So if those EU retaliatory tariffs kick in, and it goes back and forth, that does not affect Ukraine.
There you go.
Any other questions? I think that's all I've got, guys.
Thank you.
If you want to. If you want to stick around and talk, look at more pictures from the book or anything else, let me know. Rita has access to all of this. So anything you want.
You do?
Not vodkas yet, not in Virginia. The vodkas are available in DC.
What's the spirit?
This is Ukrainian spirit. These are vodkas.
They're all of them.
All the rest of that is vodka.
But all
Oh, you
that's
look
across
right.
the top are good. That's for wines.
I would have showed you so much like this.
I appreciate
Thank you, Sam, for the entertainment.
Yes, thank
The next time the brandy tasting, right?
So to be clear, actually, one of the next, we're going to bring on 2 more wineries, and our next spirit will be SHABO brandies. So, the least expensive, very cheap SHABO